What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jack Ramsays. Danny Marang here on a Saturday, right? Good Lord. Saturday night. Haven't had a pod just because of the holiday schedule, my schedule with TV, and getting home very, very, very late. So I want to make sure we got one in tonight before we game tomorrow night. Sunday night against, oh my God, who they even playing? My phone, please tell me. Mavericks, that's right. Luka might not play still. It all blends together. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Everybody feeling fat and happy, whether it's turkey, ham, brisket, whatever it is that you eat on Thanksgiving. And for those of you that listen internationally and don't have Thanksgiving, just hope you had a good weekend. Got a lot to get to now that the Blazers have played 20 games. The full sample size of opportunities, all right, are out there, and there's some stuff to actually work with. And I think there's some trends that are building. There's some notes. There are things to look at, and there's a lot of you that have some questions that all kind of work into some of that stuff. But now that there's actually something to work with, I think there's some underlying things you can kind of go off of. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, whether you're watching on here on YouTube when I do these live, or you're listening to the podcast version the day after or the couple days after, whatever it is. Like, rate, review, subscribe, help us continue growing the show. We're on our way to 6,000 subscribers here, so just keep kind of help me push it up as I try to do these as often as I can. Obviously, with the TV show, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. So I don't want to neglect it. I like doing these because it's a little more free-flowing. I can kind of address some other stuff that I can't when we're trying to pack as many things in after a game or even on the radio. So let's kind of dive into it. What is the identity of this Portland Trail Blazers team? What has kind of popped up through 20 games? And if you've listened to the post-game show, if you listened to me on the radio for the last 2 weeks, the thing that I've kind of been hammering home is that this Trailblazers team is basically Swamp Thing, and I mean that in a mildly endearing fashion, as it were. And that's just because this team, it knows how to ugly up possessions. They just do. They just know how to ugly up possessions, and it's just enough to where they can find ways to be disruptive enough to bog down games and turn it into a rock fight. And Chauncey Billups has talked about how they want to be a team other teams hate playing. And now, I don't know if they've reached that level yet. I would say that they're probably on their way. I would say that they present as a team that's frustrating to play against. They are a team that turns teams over. They are a team that is aggressive. They are a team that is in passing lanes. They are a team that is physical. There are multiple players in this team that are incredibly frustrating to play against, specifically to Monty Kamara. If you want to read about that, there is the most recent article on my Patreon going over to Monty Kamara. He's kind of the guy, and I think this is where I want to start with this. He is kind of the guy that where the ethos of this team kind of comes from. And it doesn't always have to be your best player. It doesn't have to be your most vocal player, but one of the things that I wrote on the Patreon is his effort and intensity is so high, basically defensively on every possession, that if you don't at least come close to matching that, you look foolish. And I think that's a thing that it really bears out in what they are, right? And it's a kind of a trickle-down defense effect. It's not that it's only Tumani playing defense, but you have to match his energy. You have to match his intensity, because if you don't, then you stand out like a sore thumb, right? So you look at that starting group, as it stands, I think, whether or not guys are healthy or not, whether, Ant, Shea, to Jeremy, DA, or DC, there's something there in that. If you're talking about like the lineup of the future, as it were, whether it's, Ant, Shea, to Denny, DC, where it's the younger guys and you're talking about some more, transitional guys in Jeremy and DA in the future. I don't think either of those guys are going to be here for, in 2 years. So, and the same could be true of Ant, to be honest. I just look at it as kind of like what kind of makes sense for this team with where they're at right now. I think there's some strings you can finally begin to pull of like, okay, this makes sense. And in the past, 7 years, there was always like, but why? And that includes this current era. There's the Dame CJ teams, you understood what they were in the sense of like, yeah, it's Dame and Nurk and then a couple of wings and CJ. It's like, this isn't going to work though because you've got 2-6-3 guards, right? You don't have the requisite size and athleticism to kind of balance this out. Okay, well, with the new version of this team, you at least understand what they're trying to do. Bigger, longer, stronger, more physical, more athletic. The Blazers broadcast has talked about how they're the biggest team in the league, and they are. They're a very big team now. When they start piling up injuries to their front court and their wings, they get a lot smaller real quick. But they are a team that is just that physicality, and I think you saw it really in this last game against the Kings. I crush refs because a lot of the refs in the NBA are really inconsistent. The refs in the game against Sacramento, I thought, did an excellent job of calling the game the way the game should be called, in my opinion. Okay, a lot of whistles were taken out of mouths and put in pockets, and the physicality reigned supreme. And I think the Blazers really took advantage of that in that particular game. And I think that if they were allowed to play that style every night, it would bode well for them. Although, on the flip side, I was talking to Denny after the game, and he had like 4 scratches down his arm that were pretty nasty. And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't really get many calls tonight." And they followed up. He's like, "I'm not complaining. Like nobody did." He just kind of laughed as he walked away. But I mean, also, I think Denny is the kind of guy that definitely benefits from physicality. He's a guy who wants to get downhill and put his shoulder into people. And I think he wants to do the same thing defensively. He plays with physicality on both ends. And I think that's kind of thing where, like, Tumani is growing in his game. Denny Avdia, his addition to the team, when he's out there, he's kind of growing into his role and into his opportunities. And you're seeing this physicality come through. Donovan Clingan is when, before he got hurt, was being physical on the glass and being an opposing presence at the rim. Jeremy Grant has been really good defensively as a weak side guy, coming over and blocking shots and being disruptive and being physical. And I think that's just something that just emanates from this team. Now, the flip side of that is offensively, they have been a tire fire. They've been better of recent. They've been better. But their offensive identity is I was asking Chauncey Billups about this in the press conference following the game against the Kings of like, what I'm trying to remember the exact question I asked him. It was a balance. I think it was something along the lines of being a balanced attack. It's just kind of what you're hoping for. And with that, he said, yeah, we've kind of had this thing where it's like, if it's not your night, it could be somebody else's night. And I think it's like basketball altruism. It's this equal opportunity deal. And I think you do that when you don't have 2 guys that you can count on night in, night out. Now, Chauncey played on a team in Detroit where I think the identity of what he's trying to go with makes sense in a way of like, hey, if we're really good defensively, i.e. those Detroit Pistons where you had Ben Wallace, and you had Tayshaun, you had Chauncey, and you had Rip, and I mean, like, you had Sheed, who, look, offensively talented, but also defensively talented. But you had this team where they were physical and they were a nightmare and they muddied it up. But on one night it could be Sheed, on one night it could be Rip, on one night it could be Chauncey, on one night it could be Tayshaun. Like, it was like, I mean, yes, they were all better, but also there was more there from what they could do on a given night. I don't think the Blazers can be there yet, because I think the NBA is, number one, very different. You can't play games in like the 80s and 90s anymore. You can't limit possessions to that level. Also, the boon of the three-point shot pushes things out drastically from what things used to be. But they're looking for this equal opportunity, kind of egalitarian offense, where the thing that they've, I don't want to say buzzword, but I'll use buzzword. The buzzword is trust the pass, trust the next guy. And I do think that was on display in the Kings game, where Ant specifically looked really good in just trusting it. He knew, like Chauncey Billups talked about how they knew coming into the game that they were going to blitz and they were going to trap Ant, and that the next guy was going to continue to have to make plays, and Ant trusted it. He trusted the next pass, and the Blazers were able to capitalize, and they were able to knock down enough shots, and they were able to just kind of do what they needed to do to get things going. Coming in the second half, Ant didn't force the issue, but he bent the defense a little bit more by being a bit more aggressive. And by doing that, he put the Kings in more compromising positions. He hit shots. Shaedon Sharpe got on Hill and hit shots, and all of a sudden it just started to snowball. And that was kind of like the perfect opportunity of everything kind of coming together at once, right? And I think if you take stylistically what you want to see from Portland, it's some version of that game against the Kings, where it's like, oh, that looked good. Like, that's kind of the thing that they're chasing, right? You look at what they were able to do from that game, right? Okay. They were above average in effective field goal percentage and points per possession, while holding Sacramento to quite literally league average in effective field goal percentage and below league average in points per possession. They turned the Kings over. They kept the Kings off the offensive glass. The only thing they weren't really good at was getting to the line, and then they also put the Kings on the line. Other than that, not bad. The Blazers, while continuing to struggle from three, they shot 29.7% from three. They shot 78% at the rim. Like, if you're going to suck from three, you clean up at the rim, because they haven't been able to do that this year. And I think that's where the transition comes here. It's like some trends that have popped up for the Trailblazers this year, okay? If you've listened to the postgame show, I've brought this up a few times. The Blazers, if you're looking at like what they can do or what they've done as a team, right? Everything I'm using right now is according to Cleaning the Glass. The location shooting that the Trailblazers have, which means, where are they getting their shots from? Are they getting them at the rim? Are they getting them from three? Are they getting them from the mid-range? Are they getting them from the corners? All of the things that kind of come together to say, hey, if you shot league average from these spots, where would your effective field goal percentage be based on your location? The Blazers are number one in the league, because they're number one in the league in shooting at the rim in volume. 40% of their shots are coming at the rim, while 36% of their shots are coming from three, which is below league average, 39%. So league average shooting at the rim as far as percentage is 33%. They're 7% above that, okay? The interesting thing about this, if you take a look at the teams that are the most frequent rim teams, there's some interesting kind of trends here, right? Portland's number 1, Denver's number 2, Toronto's number 3, Cleveland 4, Orlando 5. So you've got a really good team in Cleveland, a pretty damn good team in Orlando, a horrid team in Toronto, a pretty good team in Denver, and then Portland. And it's kind of like, it's these kind of hit or miss spots, right, of in between on both teams. But if you flip it over to accuracy, this is where it gets nasty, the Blazers are 28th in the league, shooting 60% at the rim. For comparison's sake, okay, the Blazers are 60% finishing at the rim. League average is 65.5. The best team in the league, Memphis, is at 73. That's a lot. Now, you can do, there's a lot of stuff that goes into like 3-point shooting and shooting variants and teams that are good shooters versus bad shooters. The Blazers don't have a lot of good shooters. Okay. Like, period, full stop, point blank. Like you look at the best teams in the league right now, Cleveland, you look at Milwaukee's kind of putting together, Boston started to put together, Golden State's a pretty good team. Like, those teams are all above average 3-point shooting teams. So Portland, or I'm sorry, the league average right now is 36.5%. The Blazers are 33.6 as a team. Yeesh. And it's just something you can't overcome. And that's where I've seen a lot of people, and there's a couple questions about, they're winning too many games, they're winning too many games, they're winning too many. They're not. They're 2 games ahead of pace. They're 2 games ahead of pace when you're talking about like them winning, roughly 23 games. I'm not worried about them winning too many games right now. You look at their point differential, you look at their shooting, you look at the games that they've won, the outlier games that they've won. They beat the Pelicans twice. The Pelicans might be the worst team in the NBA with all of their injuries. You get a Minnesota team that's trying to find their identity, and I don't think they're going to. Like, it's bad. Like the Blazers right now, based on their net differential, they've outperformed their expectation by 2.5 games. 2.5. That's number 1 in the league by a large margin. Okay, and you can say, well, they're not getting blown out in every game, and it's like, at last count, I think they had 9 or 10. I guess I should have checked this beforehand. Double-digit losses. Let's do some live notes here on the show, because that's always a good way to do this. Let's see. Losses. Sort by losses, right? That's double digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of their 12 losses are by double digits. So, how many games have they won by double digits? All right. Let's see. No. 1, 2. There's your math, right? So the games that they're winning because they're clawing through games, right? They're clawing through games. The games that they're losing, they're getting smacked. 10 double-digit losses, 2 double-digit wins. The math on that is not mathing, right? That says that they're a bad team. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy them. Doesn't mean there can't be growth. But as far as like how competitive they're going to be on a night-to-night basis, that's a pretty strong indicator. Okay, for a team that's 8-12, only a quarter of their wins are by double digits. Almost all of their losses are by double digits. It's not like they're in those losses. They're like, they're just right there. There's been significantly less of those, hey, they kept it really close until the end, they just couldn't close it, games than I think people think. It's just that's the spot that they exist in. There's this weird frame of reference of like, because they're close like at some point in the fourth quarter, they're close at halftime, that it feels like maybe they're just closer than they are in some games, or because they're not losing by 40, right? So you've got a team that has a defensive identity. Their offensive identity is starting to come through in the sense of like how they want to go about things. Hopefully I will have some more on that. I'm going to talk to the Blazers staff and just kind of go through some like pillars of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it's an interesting, like what are they trying to, like, what are the concepts that they're most interested in getting to, and kind of understand what the pillars they are that kind of they're basing everything off of. Because I think that informs kind of what you see on a night in, night out basis. I've got a bunch of other stuff, but a lot of you asked questions about things I was already working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift to those questions, because I feel like I run out of time on some of these, and you guys sent in a ton of them. I posed the question on Twitter and on Blue Sky. For those wondering, yes, I'm posting on both. I'm kind of A/B testing it. To be blunt, I will probably move to Blue Sky eventually because they don't throttle down my links, and it's a business decision. So if you want to start migrating over there, go over there. I don't care about your politics. I promise you. I'm only doing it because the experience on Blue Sky is currently better as far as engagement and how many people see and view my stuff. So that's really all it comes down to me. Yes, I'm a greedy capitalist. Sue me. So, I promise I don't care about your politics. Everyone's politics sucks. So, without further ado, I'm going to answer as many questions as I can from kind of both platforms. A lot of people, of course, are asking about trades. Trades aren't really going to happen anytime soon. So I'm going to kind of put those to the side. Nobody's really talking about anything right now. I don't think anybody's really at the forefront of being moved right now anywhere in the league, to be honest. There might be something that ends up happening here in a couple weeks, but nothing sounds like it's heating up. I've had a few phone calls and a few text conversations with some executives around the league, just kind of gauging where things are at, and it's all quiet on the Western Front, as it were. So, DJ Wilson, do you think Tease will be able to suit up at least one game for us before he's inevitably traded? I'm not going to talk about trades too much, but this is one. Like, I think if anyone, Tease would have been the most likely to be moved, just because of, like, you think about the rotation and getting Tease to a team. You know, Tease has been a good soldier. I talked to him last night. He's on crutches. I feel bad for the guy. If he hadn't, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. He was in good spirits, obviously frustrated, but, the crutches is not a great sign. The grade 2 sprain, I heard it was a pretty bad sprain in the sense of, like, they knew he was going to be out for a while. Sprains, they can suck, man. Like, everybody's like, oh, it's just a sprained ankle. It's like, those things can linger for like 2 months. It sucks. It sucks for Tease. I love Tease. He's a great dude. Hopefully he can get better as soon as possible and get on the floor and find, show teams, hey, I'm good to go. And, anybody who's looking for like a wing defender, disruptor type, to add to their team, that's a way that I think Portland can, help him get where he needs to get to. And this is, again, a question that was kind of, I've just addressed, but I'll kind of take more out of it. From Parker Davis, the Blazers too good to finish in the bottom 5. They've been playing better of late without the vets most likely to be traded. I don't think so. And this is another thing I probably should have brought up earlier. I was talking to some coaches the other night, and I asked, I should say some of the Kings coaches. I was talking to some of the Kings coaches last night, and I asked, because they've been kind of off to a rough start, but it's also kind of around the league. With the exception of like Boston and Cleveland and a couple other teams, it's really just been kind of a around the league. You do take a look at league standings, and you just kind of go, huh. It's there's not a ton of separate. I mean, I know it's early in the season, but I mean, you look at the number of teams that are around 500. Like the Knicks are 11-8, the Heat are 9-8, the Bucks are 10-9, Hawks 10-11, Pacers and Nets are both 9-11, 9-13 for the Pistons. Like, and you look in the West, it's the Lakers the Nuggets are 10-7, Lakers are 11-8, Mavs are 11-8, Clips are 12-9, Suns are 10-8, Spurs are 10-9, T-Wolves are 9-10. Like, it's just like, it's just this like muck, and so much of it. I had a couple of coaches tell me kind of the same thing, in that there's too many games right now. It's just too, like, 3 years ago they moved the season back up another week after moving it back, and I think a big part of that was like they were worried about competing with the NFL, and it's like, stop. Who cares? You're never, if you're basing your league off whether or not you're competing with the NFL, you've already lost and the league should fold. NFL is a monster and you can't compete with it, so stop trying to. Just be who you are and push through. And you're not going to cut down the 82 games, so make the season start a week earlier and give more teams a break. The Blazers, in the first 50 days of the season are going to play 24 games. That is a game every other bleeping day. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. There's no reason for that to happen. None. And you take a look at everything that's in there, and it's like, why? Why would you do this? It's just like, I don't know. But that the games being played so frequently and so often, it's kind of led to some of this. I think it's led to some of the injuries, not just for the Blazers, but around the league. But I'm not worried about them not finishing in the bottom 5. To be honest, I think they're probably going to finish somewhere between 4th and 6th. Like I said, they're 2 games ahead of pace, and when they pull the plug, and they will pull the plug, they'll go from like a pace to a pace of suck that you can't match. I just don't. I don't see a world that exists where they're not going to go down that path. There's just no way for that to work. There's no reason for that to go down that path. So yeah, I'm not worried about whether or not they can bottom out. That's not hard. Rip City Dad, has your ceiling for Shaedon changed since he returned? Is there a new player comp for Kamara as he showed some progress in shooting and his defense? Okay. The Shaedon one, there's somebody in here asked about Shaedon shooting. If you've followed along on social media for the last couple games, I've been beating the drum around Shaedon Sharpe needs to get downhill. Stop shooting off the dribble threes. And if you're wondering, like, for reference, off the dribble, Shaedon Sharpe is shooting under 17% from 3 on the season. That's a train wreck. That's horrendous. Unfortunately, Scoot Henderson is at 14% on off the dribble threes. Their pull-up shooting. It's bad. Now, flip that over. Okay? Shaedon Sharpe is shooting 47% on catch and shoot threes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. That's in the last 2 weeks. I was looking at something else for this. He is shooting 42% of the season on catch and shoot threes. Scoot Henderson is shooting 46% on catch and shoot threes this season. Okay? Those two young guys, there's something that needs to happen with them, and it needs to. Their offense every night needs to start with them going downhill. Absolutely, unequivocally, they need to go downhill. They need to attack the rim. That needs to be where they live. And they need to finish there. My ceiling for Shaedon hasn't changed. After he had those 2 explosive games, he had the 33 and 32 point game, there's been kind of some so-so Shaedon in there. And I'm not demanding that he be the 25 point a game a night guy every single night, the consistency. Like, he's in year 3 and he's still trying to figure out where he's at, right? But if he's going to be a foundational building block, that's the thing. And so I haven't adjusted my ceiling or my expectations for him, but I'm starting to kind of like put the rails on like what I want to see him do. There's a lot of times where he's talked about, and I think DeAndre Ayton has compared him a little bit to Devin Booker too, as far as like his potential and like what he can do. And I think Shaedon maybe needs to get away from the Booker stuff in the sense of like Book's just a cleaner shooter, a more consistent shooter. Whereas I think Shaedon's a slasher who can shoot. Like it's kind of like Ant Edwards taking like 12 threes a game now. It's like, sure, the efficiency model says that, but you're a god at going to the rim. And the thing is with it, it's like, it's not easier to shoot threes in a sense. But it is harder to put the ball down and attack and drive to the rim because it's more physical. It requires more effort. It's one of those things where it requires more work to get there, and you can get beat up and you can get hurt, and it's a difficult task. But I want to see him like that's the world I want to see him in. Attack. And once you're attacking and they're worried about you attacking, then you can work as a secondary guy as a catch and shoot. You've got to earn the right to be able to take that many pull-up threes. Like, I don't want to see hezzy tween pull-up three from Shaedon in the first quarter unless he's got it rolling. Like, it's just, he's just bricked too many shots at that point. To be fair, it's the same thing to Scoot. Like, that should be like option E for those guys because they can get to the rim and they can create for themselves and they can create for others. Like, it's not that I don't want them shooting threes. I just want the default to be attack. And then expand the game from there. That's what I want to see. And again, they could both just be, particularly with Shaedon, it could just be a really poor shooting start. It happens to plenty of guys. But even if that is the case, and he like comes back to earth a little bit as far as, or actually comes out of the depths of hell with his shooting, and lands back on earth, even then, I still want the basis of his game to be attack. And then as far as the player comp from 2, as he showed progress, I've kind of thought of him as like big Danny Green, and maybe that's underselling him. But I mean, Danny won multiple titles for multiple teams. Like he was an incredibly important player, and I don't know. And again, 2's bigger. And so it's not a great one-to-one comp. I asked Chauncey about this. It was the last question I asked in the press conference last night. Like, has 2 kind of wanted to enter, or has he entered that era? Like, where is he at as far as in the pantheon of young wing defenders? And Chauncey was pretty damn complimentary. He was like, he's getting there. He's getting to the point where teams are like, go away from this guy. And I've talked to his opponents last year, and I've done a little bit this year, and you guys have seen it on broadcasts or if you're at games, how frustrated opponents are with Toumani Camara. The look on their face when he picks him up at 85 feet and just wears him like a straitjacket. I again, in the article that I wrote on my Patreon, I detailed like all of the stuff that he has done and how disruptive he has been, and it's incredible. It really, like, maybe this is because I watch so much Blazers basketball. He should end up getting all defense votes. I don't know if he'll make an NBA all defense team this first time around. He should be getting votes. Legitimately, he should be getting votes. He's one of the most versatile wing defenders in the entire league. A guy who can guard Julius Randle one night, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander another, De'Aaron Fox the next. I mean, that's... And not only do it well. He wore Fox out last night. And don't get me wrong, Fox got him a couple times because De'Aaron Fox is just so unbelievably fast. And 2 made a little bit of an adjustment, gave him a little bit more space. Fox didn't have a night where he killed the Blazers last night. I mean, I don't think anybody that has gone at 2 this year has killed him. Trae Young had a nice game. He also had 6 turnovers in the game against the Hawks. He was a disaster. He was efficient, but he was also a disaster. So, I'd have to take a deeper look at the as a projection for him, but I think that's where I'm at. Dave Golub, who do you think has improved the most from year 1 to year 2 from the young core? It's 2. Shai's injury kind of held him back, and Scoot. He's improved, but it's like more intrinsic stuff. The game against Indiana was really was his best game of his career. I said that night. I was like, yeah, this is, and it wasn't even just the assists. It wasn't the box score. It was his control and manipulation of the game. I want to see that like 10 more times. Then we can start talking about, Scoot's improvement and kind of where he's at. Rob asks, what are our current most effective lineups based on raw numbers right now? Okay, I'm assuming you mean by like the groupings. So I click through one of my lineup pages and I got to pull it back up. Hold on. All right. Excuse me. All right. No, my throat is not torn to hell. When you're talking about lineups, the ones that have had the best net ratings, with if you're talking about like point differential, the number one lineup of Ant 2, Denny, Jeremy, Ayton. 328 possessions. This is in the 10th percentile in point differential. They're a minus 13.8. And that's because their offense is in the 3rd percentile. Their defense is in the 51st percentile, which, again, a little above league average, not too bad. But you have to get down to a lineup with 58 possessions, which is nothing. And that's Scoot, Ant, Tumani, Denny, Ayton. And they're a plus 22.6. And that's the thing is, like, you go through, the Blazers have so many lineup combinations. I mean, so many lineup combinations. And there's just, God, the only lineup that is positive, okay, yeah, that's it. That lineup is the only combination with only 50 possessions that is positive, because the Ant, Shaden, 2, Jeremy, Klingon 1 is a negative 0.3. And that's because the defense is god tier at 84.6 point per possession, but they're at 84.3 offensively. They're so bad. And that's the thing. So much of this, like, a lot of their defense is actually really good. Like, a lot of their defensive lineups are pretty decent. I shouldn't say really good. They're pretty decent. But their offensive lineups are just so bad. And again, it's just when you're that poor from three and you're that poor at the rim, you're gonna get killed. And they haven't done great about getting to the free throw line. So that's kind of where that's at. There's a couple versions of this question of whether or not Chauncey Billups could come back as a coach. He's obviously in a lame duck season. My thought process is I don't think either side is not that they're open to it. I just think that they're going to make a decision to both move on. I just do. I don't think Chauncey wants necessarily to spend the next couple of years coaching a developing team. It's a different kind of coaching. And to be honest, like, a lot of times those coaches don't fare well. Because if the rebuild isn't done right, it kind of falls on the coach. I think you look at, like, Dagnall in OKC as kind of the exception to that. More often than not, there's a couple coaching changes, that take place. But I think for the most part, I think it's one of those things where I at least hope that Blazer fans have like backed off of the everything is Chauncey Billups' fault, the same way that they should have with Terry Stotts. But I realize that everybody wants a scapegoat and everybody wants to lose their mind and blah 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 blah. And look, I've made no bones about it. Like, I don't think Chauncey's the best coach in the world, but I think the thing that is the most important, which is keeping these guys all pulling in the same direction and helping, like, push the development stuff, he's done good at. Full stop. Like, it's difficult to be a young tanking team, and everyone knows it, and to keep everybody pulling in the same direction. So, it's one of those things where it's like, but I don't think that's a thing that neither the Blazers nor Chauncey Billups want to do long term. So, I'm going to pivot over to some of the Blue Sky questions. I'm bringing this one up only because I'm going to have something new on this I think on Monday is when I push it to publish. Blazers fan, that's a pretty easy handle. Outside of top guys like Flag and Bailey, which draft prospects do you think fit Portland's long-term needs? I'm going to have my next draft board out here on Monday. Again, like I said, you're going to see some guys moving up, some guys moving down. Dylan Harper has been very good. Very, very, very good. I think that there's a real push that he could end up being number 2. I think Igor Demin at BYU has flown up boards. I think Kasparas Yakstionis from Illinois has flown up boards. I think Asa Newell at Georgia is making moves up. I think Boogie Fland at Arkansas is making moves up. I think those are guys that are all kind of like start moving the needle, and it depends on like where you're drafting at. There have been some guys that have moved down, but it's gonna be interesting to watch over the next couple of months, kind of what what pops up for the Blazers, and I think the Blazers they're just going to prioritize the best pick a match or take the best possible prospect available, like the one with the highest upside. That's kind of what they've prioritized. So, also from a Blazers fan, rank the players most likely to be on the team 3 seasons from now to the least likely to be on the team 3 seasons from now. I think the 3 seasons from now case is pretty short. Shaden, Tumani, Klingon. 3 years from now, those 3. Everybody else is on the same level of like least likely. Maybe that sounds harsh, but Denny. Actually, you know what? That's not true. Denny's on that list. The 4. Those 4 guys. I think you can make a case for maybe Roops just because of how young he is. Scoot still kind of up in the air, even though it's only year 2. I think it's pretty safe to say that there's been a change in expectations for him. As far as like, I don't think any evaluators I know are still looking at him like he can be a star. So I think that's kind of changed things, and like it's as simple as let's look at this draft. Let's say the Blazers don't get the number 1 pick. Let's say they're picking 2nd or 3rd. Let's say they're picking 3rd, just to make it simple. And the consensus is Cooper's 1, Ace Bailey's 2, and Harper's 3. If the Blazers are picking 3rd and Harper's the best prospect on the board, and he's a point guard, that ends up being, you know, a point guard they go with. It's an interesting spot as far as like where they are right now, and I think if you do the same exercise and you're truly honest about it, and you do this for most teams, it's not much more than 3 or 4 guys, because teams just flip over. Like if you go look at rosters every couple of years, it's crazy. Like Anthony Simons is the only guy on this team left, like tied back to the last era. That's it. That's a spot. Like it's one of those things where it's like this whole idea of where it's at. This is a comment. I don't go into many of the comments during the show, but somebody says, "Who owns picking Scoot over Amen? Was that Schmitz or Cronin?" I ultimately it always falls with Joe because he's the decision maker. But if you're saying that you wanted or you believed Amen's a higher tier prospect than Scoot Henderson, you are in the staggering minority, like the less than 1%. That's like that. Like just because somebody turns out better, if you're talking about projecting prospects, no one was projecting. And I love Amen. I think he's going to end up being probably the best role player in the NBA, legitimately. He's phenomenal. But if you're talking about ceilings, you're talking about a guy and honestly, both the Thompson twins, who are athletic freaks, but are some of the worst shooters in modern NBA history. Like as far as wing prospects. And like those aren't the hallmarks of guys that are franchise pillars as far as like you're talking about being a top 3 player in your roster. And that's what the Blazers are trying to find. And I think that was the hesitation with taking either of those guys. As much as I love them, like, Amen is in Houston. I love the nickname for him and Tari Eason, the Terror Twins. Like they're so disruptive. They're so disruptive, and Amen does so many things in the box score and out of the box score: blocks, rebounds, steals, assists. I mean, he's just everywhere. But the inability to score outside of the paint is it's something that it hampers him so much. You know, he's trying to make some progress on that. We'll see. But, I mean, the shooting stuff was bottom 10 percentile type stuff. And that's just something that's you can't really project anything out of that. Zach Lee asks, why is Denny initiating so many half-court sets? He feels like a natural secondary creator. So I'm hypothesizing the coaching staff has lost belief that Ant can get them organized and make the correct reads consistently. I don't necessarily think that. That you got to be, I don't want to say careful. I think when you see stuff like that and you make those kind of judgments, you better have like all of the variables that kind of go into it, right? And I think more of it is Denny's not the shooter that Ant is, but Denny's better at getting downhill than Ant is, in that it's better for Ant to not have the entire eyes of the defense when he like. This is something Dame always told me, is that he liked getting off the ball and having CJ do some stuff and letting Nurk run some of the sets, because you need to change the eye line of the defense. You can't consistently walk the ball down, attack from the left wing in a pick and roll, and have 10 eyes on you the whole time. You got to give it up. You've got to get off. You've got to attack from the backside of the defense. You've got to get the ball in the middle of the floor. You've got to change where the attack is coming from. That way you can't wall your defense off the same way every time. And when you have Denny, what I think they've done with him really in the last 10 days is they've gotten Denny into the middle of the floor a lot more, which presents more problems. Like, it's the one thing you want to do. You want to get the ball to the middle of the floor as often as possible. That's what you want to do. And Denny is very good at getting there. And he's 6'9", 240 pounds. He can move people out of the way, and he can pass over the top. Okay? And in doing so, now Anthony Simons, who's the team's best shooter, is able to attack on catch and shoots. And if you go look at Ant's shooting over the last 2 weeks, okay, on the season, Ant's catch and shoot is 31% from three. If you go back over the last 2 weeks, let me pull this back up. Something else I was working on. Anthony Simons is shooting 50% from three. No, turns out the guy that can shoot can shoot. And when you're getting him to these opportunities to attack off the catch and shoot, now he doesn't have to create as much. And it makes it easier on everyone when you change that angle of attack. And I think it's more that than the coaching staff losing belief in Ant, because go back and look at that Sacramento game and watch the second half of the basketball. Who's initiating the offense over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? It's Anthony Simons. It's just about having those different options. It's something I believe in. It's something I very much wanted when they traded for Danny Avdija. The primary creator and a guy who can run the offense as not just the secondary guy on the backside, but take the ball out of Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons' hands and allow them to work as cutters or spacers, or same thing for Jeremy Grant. That was the thing that like I have been begging for this team to get, because they're just so short on the creator. Like, this is what they tried to do with Evan Turner. Look, I didn't hate the Evan Turner signing in general, like what ET was supposed to be. It was that they gave him that much freaking money. Also, shout out to ET for getting the bag. You know, congrats, dude. But the idea of Evan, I understood. The problem was they were never able to actually utilize him as like the on-ball guy where Dame and CJ both played off of him. Kind of the way that, this is kind of a weird way to put it, but kind of like Kyle Anderson has been throughout his career. But yeah, I think it's less the coaching staff losing faith in Ant and more of, hey, how can we maximize the different talents that we have up and down this roster? Acacia, what one development in this young season has given you the most reason for hope? I'm so glad you're here. I'll finally be able to catch live shows when they are live. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't typically say when I'm going live, because I don't know when I'm going live, because I'm usually doing like 18,000 things and I'm scatterbrained as hell. Sorry. But the one development this young season giving me the most reason for hope. I don't think there's one particular thing. I would say that there's a couple things that, like, when I'm looking at players in general, two, elevating to like an all-NBA caliber defender is a real thing. Donovan Clingan's defense being even better than I anticipated, with his offense being a little worse than I anticipated. Both those polls were a little bit further out than I thought they were going to be. Shaedon's been what I kind of expected from Shaedon. Same from Scoot. I don't think it's any one thing, because as much as I like Donovan, as much as I like Shaedon, as much as I like as much as I like Denny, Like, Denny is, the last couple of weeks where it was like, oh, Denny's been really good. It's like, this is the Denny that I expected. The Denny that played in the first 2 weeks, that's not the Denny that that's what I told everybody, just kind of chill on that. They'll figure it out. So his development has just been like, that's what I expect from him. To be a guy just impacts the box score up and down. This is going to sound harsh, and I don't mean it as that. The thing that would give me hope if I was a Blazers fan is what I'm watching in college basketball. There's so many good prospects in this draft. Like, that's where the hope comes from. Because I don't see any of these guys as a 1A on this roster right now. And that's what this team needs. And it's not that none of this matters in the grand scheme of things, but it matters less, if that makes sense. Until they have that guy, and they just need that North Star. So, I just, I don't know. It's just, it's a weird space. Like, I don't want to be Danny Downer, because that's not how I mean this. It's they're the spot that they're in right now is like, there's a bunch of fun little developments, and I love watching guys figure stuff out. Like, something fun is like, is Delano Banton, like, the one thing I said after last season, like, he's an NBA player. There's no question that he is an NBA player. But, like, which Delano is real? Like, is Delano actually a shooter? Like, maybe. I don't know. I think he's currently leading the team in 3-point percentage. Yeah, he is. Like, I don't know. Because Delano has these moments, like Delano's, man. He's DB Hooper hoops. Sometimes he hoops too hard. Sometimes he hoops too soft. But the one thing you know, he's going to go out there and hoop. It is what it is in that regard, right? I don't want that to sound harsh, but like, it's a lot of little things, and it's not the thing that's like giving me or sustaining hope. Bryce Schmidt asks, how are we feeling about the young guys at the quarter-way into the season? How's the team facilitate continued positive development moving forward? Stay healthy, number one. That's always going to be a big deal. But as far as like development, I've probably been harsh on Scoot in a sense, and that comes with being the number 3 overall pick. For me, that Indiana game, and I want to call that game out because it does stand out, because I asked around and I was like, do you see Scoot being maybe potentially a guy who the change for him is to be more Andre Miller than it is to be more, diet Russell Westbrook? And I didn't get a lot of pushback to that, because I think that's, if you watch that Indiana game, that's what I saw. I saw Andre Miller. I saw a guy getting into the paint, putting a defender on his hip, and then manipulating the defense and using his brain in a sense of like, this is how my game can mature and play for 10 years, and it won't have to change. It's not going to rely on my burst. It's not going to rely on crazy athleticism. It's going to rely on me being smarter and understanding what I can do. Because Scoot is a tank. Scoot is incredibly strong. Okay? Get in the paint. Delay. Make a defense make a decision. And when they make the decision, you make the next correct decision. When you draw 2, find the lob over the top to DeAndre Ayton. Throw the bounce pass to the corner. Keep your dribble alive, and if the center doesn't step up, get a little floater going. Like, I don't think Scoot is going to be a 20 and 10 guy. I don't think he ever was, to be honest. But he could be a 15, 16, and 9 guy. I don't think that ship has sailed. And so like that's the development that I want to see. And it's not even like I want to see Scoot shooting threes or I want to see him clean up his finishing. I want him to have a plan when he attacks. And I want him I want him to be a guy who has a floater. Like those are the three things that I want to see him work on. When I watch his game, that's what I come away feeling. Like those are the things that you need to capitalize on. When you're working out in the summer, that's what you need to work on. And I think his game would advance really well. T Darkstar, this is shout out Darkstar, longtime BE guy. If the Blazers were to make a trade, what kind of assets would they look to move, and what kind of assets would they seek in return? I think that's a more interesting question than like what could they get if they traded X. And I think the thing that they, number one, are looking at, if you look at their books, a lot of it comes off in like 2026. And I think that the Blazers are in this good spot financially of not like when they move eventually, Jeremy and DA, which I think Jeremy's closer to the trade deadline. I think DA is closer to the summer, but that's neither here nor there for now. I think that they're going to look at some like redraft guys, and I'm not saying there's anything pending or even anything remotely out there, but I think you look at a guy like a Jabari Smith Jr. in Houston. I think you look around the league at these guys that might need a new home. I think they'll look at some of those guys and evaluating like second chance kind of guys. More often than not, second chance guys don't work out. Like it took Delano Banton, 4 teams to show he could stick in the NBA. You know, Jeremy Grant, it took him a little while to kind of catch on. Those are two like opposite ends of the spectrum as far as success rates. But like Jeremy's a second round pick in Philadelphia, who it took him a little while to put everything together, and then look at where he's at now. He's made $200 million. So, but as far as like the kind of assets they look to get moved, I think you're looking at older and longer term money. I think they look at getting draft picks back, but I don't think this front office prioritizes picks that much, unless they're like 2025 first, which nobody's giving up. Tried to tell everybody that last year. But beyond that, I think they prioritize young players and getting those opportunities. Like that, Toumani Camara is exactly that. Toumani Camara is a young player they prioritize in getting back from Phoenix. So I think those are the kind of opportunities you expect to see as far as like what they would look at. I mean, you just kind of weird spots in there. Here's a fun one, Northwest Pete. Why did Calabro keep saying your shirt was soup stained at the beginning of the season? Because Kevin Calabro is Kevin Calabro. All of it's been a bit. All of it's been a joke. And people were texting me like, why does Calabro say your shirt is soup stained? I'm like, I think I've eaten soup once at Moda in my life, because we have the media dining for the broadcast crew, and not just the broadcast like crew, but like all of the people that work on the broadcast. You got like a chow hall in there, and they do have soup every night. But Casey was just having fun with it, the same way he talked about having we were going to give away a case of water from the Great Lakes. Like I'm anytime Kevin Calabro says my name, I love it. Because I never know what's going to happen. So, and Casey's a legend. He can say whatever the hell he wants. It's fun. I don't care. But yeah, no, it was entirely fun. Had I known he was doing that earlier, I 100% would have like grabbed an old T-shirt and just like thrown a soup stain on it and like done it on air. Would have had some fun with it. Wolfgang Jaquez. What are your preseason guess for wins and losses to the first 20 games? What has made them better or worse than you thought? I thought they would win 5 to 6 games. They are 2 games ahead of that pace. I said they would win probably 8 of their first 30. So, looking at their schedule coming up, it's not exactly favorable. Let's pull that back up again. Close that tab. We can go full. That's a win. That's a loss real quick over the next 10 and kind of wrap some stuff up here real quick. Let's see. Dallas is coming down tomorrow. That's, I don't think Luka's playing. So, but even then, That's probably a loss. At the Clippers, probably a loss. Home against the Jazz, that's probably a win. So there's 9 wins right there. At the Lakers, probably a loss. Home against the Nuggets, that's probably a loss. At the Spurs, at the Mavericks, you might split one there. Excuse me. That cough snuck up on me. And then you play the Jazz again, which would get you to 10 wins. But you have the Mavs and then the Sixers, which God only knows at this point in time. That might be another win. But the 76ers gets you up to the end of the year. So your next was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 10 games. Next 10 games will get you through the end of the year. December 1st to December 30th. Oh, so that's true. There will be 2 additional cup games in there. So, it'll be 12 games in the next 30 days. So, well, it could be 13, I guess, if you subscribe to the belief that they could still make it into the NBA Season Cup, which Joe Simons has tried to lay out for us on Rip City Wrap Up. But yeah, again, I think they'll get through their first 30 games, and my expectation was they would win 8 games. They might win 10, and that's because they've picked up some wins along the way. Again, plus or minus 2 games is probably where they'll end up in this. And then they start out the new year with a 5-game road trip to the Lakers, Bucks, Pistons, Pels, and Mavs. So, it's a tough road to hoe, as it were. But I think when you look at a schedule, you can't predict the outliers that are going to happen, good or bad. You just kind of have to understand what is and isn't going to work. On an 82 game process. I guess this is another question. Somebody else asked a couple of versions of this. What do you make of the Fisher report regarding the preference of Williams over Ayton? Is this an attempt to build Time Lord's market, or does Portland truly prefer Williams over Ayton? I think it's pretty clear that stylistically they prefer a guy like Rob. I mean, Donovan's closer to Rob than he is to DA. DA's more offensive minded, where Donovan and Rob are significantly more defensive minded and much more just hard role guys and working in DHOs and having playing in those handoff and playmaking spots in the middle of the floor, where DA's just kind of a role finish guy. I mean, DA's significantly better than both offensively, but I think DA was more the guy that would have made more sense with Dame, where I think a guy like Rob or Donovan, and if he starts putting stuff together, that's more of a version of that is it makes more sense to have those guys for what I think they're trying to do, which is to be this defensive minded, gritty, grimy team. I think Blazers fans were maybe a little surprised by how good Rob is, because they probably didn't watch a lot of Celtics basketball and because of the injury prone stuff. But Rob's a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate when healthy. That's not underselling it. He's that good. So, yeah, I think it would make more sense as far as Rob being a guy that they would prefer stylistically going forward. But I think that's kind of the way that would have worked, at least. And the whole point of making the DA swap was just to get more athletic. Have a guy who was better finishing around the rim. They knew that they were Nurk's one of the 3 best screeners in the league. They knew they were losing some of that. They maybe underestimated how much, but I think that's where they're at. Last one, interested to know whether you've readjusted your opinion on the over-under on wins. Not yet. I wouldn't really do that. Like I said, if you had it at 19.5, bet the over. If you got it at 22.5, bet the under. I think that was the sweet spot. But two wins could swing it. It could push it to 25 when it's all said and done. Because I think I picked 23. It was 22 or 23. I'd have to go back and look, but it was one of the two. I still think they end up there. So we'll see where it goes. That'll do it for now. We're well over an hour now, so I just want to make sure I wrap it up. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. Don McClingan was supposed to join the show last week. Obviously, he got hurt. So we will revisit that. I do have other guests coming on. We will have a couple players here in the next couple weeks, and then we will work our way from there, and we'll get to a somewhat more regular schedule as the games will get spread out ever so slightly. I will be gone in 2 weeks. I'm going to Army Navy. I'm going to DC, so I'll be out for 4 or 5 days. So I might be doing my TV show from a hotel room in DC, and if I remember to bring a camera, perhaps I'll do a podcast from there. Other than that, like, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. You can contact me on social media at Danny Marang. Again, I'll make a mild push here. I'm probably going to end up moving to Blue Sky simply for business reasons. So if you're wondering where I'm going to be, I will still be on Twitter for the time being, just to kind of continue to test this. But the testing is leaning me more towards Blue Sky. So you can email the show, jackramsays@gmail.com. You can find me on 1080 The Fan every day, noon to 3 with my co-host, Dusty Hera. And then following every Trailblazers postgame on Rip City Wrap-Up on K2 or 2.2 Charge, of which in a month, that'll be flipping over to KUNP, and we'll have some more cool stuff to do there. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope everybody has a safe and great Thanksgiving, and I will catch you guys on the next show. Take care. Talk soon.